now. Well, we are super grateful for Garden Hotline and Laura Matter, our wonderful presenter this lovely afternoon, talking about the importance of evergreen plants in the Northwest. Thank you so much, Laura, and everyone for being here.
Yeah, you are most welcome. This is a topic that I love, and sort of the culmination of talking about this, why evergreen plants are important in our environment is celebrating them by doing crafts with them. So, as we reach the end of this, it's a very short PowerPoint. We'll reach the end of it and talk about like all the different ways you can use greenery to enhance your home during the winter. And this is a you'll see in some of the pictures, this is a project that we do with people all over King County every year, and do it in person with a lot of people. And some people, they're not Christian, they're not celebrating Christmas, but they're celebrating these beautiful plants and the growth of them. And the wreath itself has some symbolism in many cultures, but people use it in different ways. So we just encourage people to embrace the beauty and the usefulness of these plants. And we're going to look at a few reasons why. But I want to tell you about this picture too. So this photograph was taken out at the Bellevue Botanical Gardens. If you've never been there, it's a wonderful place to explore. And I use this sort of as a title picture to show, the tall trees in the background are part of our environment. We take them for granted. We sometimes don't notice them. You see everybody's looking at all these beautiful, fall blooming things. This was taken in the fall out there a few years ago. And yes, all those asters are gorgeous, but nobody's looking up at these silhouettes of these beautiful trees, and the sunset behind them. And they're pretty important parts of our landscape. All right, so it's going back to being slow here, Elizabeth. We'll get it going. Okay, so I do have a question, and we have Penny to answer our question. So my question is, how much do you know now about evergreen plants in the Northwest? Like, what is your knowledge level? And you have some choices, A, B, C, D. You know a lot. You're an expert about them. You know a fair amount, enough to identify and pick some plants, especially for your garden. You don't know very much, C, very little. You don't know which plant is which or what they need to grow. And then D, nothing. You didn't even know that some plants were evergreen. So what would you say your answer would be?
Probably in between B and C. I can't see very little, but I'm not sure a fair amount. I'm not so sure. So probably in between.
Okay. Fair enough.
But I definitely have a love of trees. I have 25 of them around my home in Auburn, which I have with the wreath making classes. I learned to identify which ones were the incense laurel, the pine and the fir, and my maple, and my cherries. And then I have 10 acres up in Bellingham. Well, it's 27 acres, but 10 acres is forested. And I'm trying to spend more time walking through the woods to try to identify more of them, to appreciate more of them for sure.
That's wonderful. So do you know about the Cattlemen's Winter School that happens in Stanwood each January?
No.
Well, you should know about this. Look it up. WSU is involved in this. And if you put Cattlemen's Winter School Stanwood in a search browser, you will find the info. They just put their class list out. So they're doing the class sometime in January. I forget the date. I didn't notice what the date was. It's a Saturday. It's at the high school in Stanwood, and now they've built a brand new high school there. So they'll be using the new school. First time back in person since COVID happened. And they have all kinds of classes like, how to felt wool and how to butcher a pig and how to pick, grow tomatoes well. But they have a class taught by WSU extension person who knows a lot about forests for home, for people like you who own tracts of land with trees that are forested, about how to keep them healthy. And I think there's several classes this time that are relevant to forests. So you might want to check that out, because you can learn a lot from them too, and lots of resources that they have for forest landowners in the state of Washington.
Thank you so much for that resource. This is exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So as we're looking at evergreen plants, we typically classify them into two different categories. We have conifers, which are plants that bear cones. A lot of these are, very old, primitive, been around many, many years on the planet. They usually have needle-like leaves, like if you think of a pine tree, or scale, like in this picture of this Western red cedar. There are lots of different ones. We have lots of native ones, and then ornamentally, there's a ton of other ones that are used that are not native to the Northwest, but are relatives of some that are. And then on the left, you see what we call a broadleaf evergreen, which may not mean that it has a big leaf. It just means that the leaf isn't needle or scale-like. So it's bigger, broader, has more of the leaf area that's visible. These stay on all year long for both. There is sometimes some flagging that happens with conifers, in particular when summers are hot, and you'll see that a lot, where interior needles will dry and fall off. So they do lose some leaves over the years, but they always maintain a full set of leaves. And so there's implications to the environment for that, as to why that's helpful. And the plant you're seeing on the left is a huckleberry, and that's one that's in my yard, and that Western red cedar was in a yard I used to live in. I took that picture at night. So just to sort of showcase the beauty of the needles.
So I would call that an incense laurel, but you call it a huckleberry.
This is a huckleberry. So this is a close-up picture. These leaves are maybe an inch and a half long.
They're flat. They're kind of flat.
Yes. And there are laurels that, have bigger broadleaf like this, and those are broadleaf evergreens as well. These have sort of reddish stems, the reddish new growth on them. They get edible blue huckleberries that you can harvest. So I have one at my front door, and I used to have one at the back door, but it overgrew the space, so I moved it a little bit away. And both of those fruit for me. I don't typically get too much off of them, but I let the birds eat them as well.
Oh, okay, so the one on the left is the broadleaf, and the one on the right is the conifer.
Correct.
Oh, okay, I mixed them up. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's important about evergreen plants is that they create microclimates. So they can do this in all seasons. Really nicely for us, they do it in the wintertime. And because they're evergreen, and the leaves are alive, they are still exchanging gases. The rate of exchange is slower than it would be in the summer when there's a lot of sun. Plants transpire. They let out gases through their leaves. It's what gives us oxygen. They take in carbon dioxide. And the hotter it is, the faster that system works. It's sort of a hydraulic system too, where water is being pulled up through the roots because of the gas exchange that's happening in the leaves and the tops of the plants. So they can warm up the air around them. In that house where I had that cedar tree, in the front yard, there was a little lawn area on one side of the walkway, and it was surrounded by a bunch of evergreen plants, tall trees and shrubs. And my neighbor to the upside hillside to the west had a big wide open lawn and no plants around it. And so in the wintertime, when their lawn was white with frost, mine would not be. It would just be dewy, because these plants were breathing and warming up the air enough around it that I didn't get frost on my lawn. So it can be very dramatic what you can see that they do. They can shelter from snow and rain. Like in this bottom picture, you can see that there's no snow gathering down under that pine tree. And that, you can use plants to your advantage that way to sort of protect areas. They certainly can protect from rain. Our rains a lot of times in the winter, the better rains, which are a little bit warmer, come out of the Southwest and, from Hawaii. Sometimes we get what they call the Pineapple Express, those really warm, big stormy rainfalls. And those are coming at us sideways sometimes. So, these kinds of trees can actually block the rain from, like, when you're trying to get in your front door, they're protecting you a little bit. They can create windbreaks as well. So the same ideas wherever the wind is coming from. If you know in your property where the wind moves, you can see, like in this top picture, what happens where the wind filters through the trees. The velocity drops to 5 miles an hour as opposed to 30 miles an hour that it's coming in. So it can be pretty dramatic. So these giant plants are actually doing a big service for us. And then in the summertime, they can cool the air. So they do the same as they're transpiring, then they are doing the same thing. They're sort of providing an air conditioning effect around your home. They also can shade things. So, certainly we don't want these right next to our houses, but they're tall enough that they can cast shade on the roof of the house. I used to have a maple tree on the corner of that house where that cedar was, and it was a terrible spot for it because it was too close to the house. Eventually had to be cut down because the tree was dying. And this is a deciduous tree, but in the summertime it's fully leafed out. So an evergreen would provide the same benefit. It would shade the roof of the living room. And I was working as a landscaper out in the heat all day long. And I would come in and the house would be about 60 degrees because that tree was shading the house. So made a huge difference. When the tree came down, the house was hot from then on during the summer. So we didn't get the benefit of that. It was that dramatic, just from one tree.
I know. I've been in my cul-de-sac for 33 years, and I have the only house left with all the trees. And everybody says, cut your trees. And when it's 90 degrees in the cul-de-sac, it's 80 in the backyard, and it's less than 70 in the house, all
Yes.
naturally.
Yes.
All naturally. It's just you open the door and you get this blast of cold air, and it's all from the trees. And people are like, well, your gutters. It's like, I'll clean them. Your roof, I clean my roof. Well, it's
Yeah.
going to strangle your pipes. I've never had one pipe strangled by roots.
Yeah.
And there's been so much clear cutting and so many houses, developments gone in. One family bought this house about 2 blocks from me, and they had like 30 beautiful trees. It was on a hill. They cut every single tree off the property, kept the house for 1 year, sold all the trees for thousands of dollars, and then sold the house and moved away.
Oh no.
I know. I wish there were laws in the city that you couldn't do that.
Well, in the city of Seattle, there are laws about big trees. So if a tree is considered, of a certain size and diameter, they have to be protected. And not a lot of people know that. The other thing that happens is trees sometimes can straddle property lines, and then both people have ownership of it. And then there has to be, negotiations about what happens with the tree. But that's part of why that measure went into place, where oh gosh, I forget what they call it. I'll have to think about that. But where special trees, big trees are protected like that. And there are some building codes that require some of that, especially in the city of Seattle, especially if it's commercial property. But they can get around that sometimes by putting in new landscapes or maybe vertical gardens on the side of the building. It doesn't replace a tree, though. A tree has such enormous benefits to the environment compared to little plants that you're growing at the side of a house, that it doesn't compare, for sure.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate. And on a slope too, they're running the danger of having erosion, because they don't have anything that's holding the soil together.
Yeah, nothing to absorb the water, and they get flooding and erosion. Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, I understand that people are concerned, the things you mentioned, cleaning the gutters, cleaning the roof, roots in the pipes. Certain trees don't bother that as much as others. So if you had something like a cottonwood, that would be something I'd be a little more concerned about in pipes. because they're seeking water. So they're, they're water lovers. And so their roots will go just about anywhere to find whatever water there is. And the old concrete pipes that used to be around and still are in many cases for sewage pipes coming out of houses get broken really easily like that. So you do have to, you do have to consider which trees are on your property and how they behave and grow. And then you also have to keep them up because you want sometimes to prune them, to open them up so that wind can go through them, as well as not just hitting them like a wall, because that can break limbs and those limbs then drop on the house and that can be dangerous. So they are an investment, but they're an important one. So in the summer, we get all our heat in the summer. July to September are our hottest months, typically the drier months. We did have some rain this year in July. The year before we had that heat dome in June, which was really unusual. Our conifers in particular depend on that June rain to sort of stock up and get them through these dry months. And then the rains start coming again. We had a dry October this year, so it was kind of like everything shifted a month. But we need to be able to protect them in these months. Sometimes these days, even big trees, it's worthwhile to give them a deep soaking in the middle part of this hot spell. Evergreens can create dense shade because they're so, their branches are so thick. And then that breathing activity cools the air. So if you imagine walking down this road and it's, you're in the full sun, you're going to feel the heat. You get into this area and you feel that cool air on your skin. It's in the middle of summer as soon as you walk into that area.
That's true.
So this is when our rains happen. So I wanted to give you a little comparison between Seattle and New York, and we see Seattle on the left, where you see the very low rainfalls in July in particular, and August, and then it starts to pick up again. Get a lot of rain in November, typically December and January, and precipitation January, February can often be in the form of snow, although we already had snow early this year in December. But you can see just how it drops off, and it can drop off very sharply and then pick back up. So we have a very definite wet period and a dry period, as opposed to places on the East Coast, which can support really huge broadleaf trees, deciduous trees that are that drop their leaves in the winter, but have, they can grow hundreds of feet tall. We don't have that many of those out here. We can grow some of the ornamentals here, but they don't grow as big as they do in the East Coast. And the reason is that they get this steady rain all the time. And actually New York City gets more rain annually than the city of Seattle does. Most people don't understand that. They think of us as this rainy place because we have these periods of time when it's really gray and overcast and raining. But New York it gets more inches per year, and it gets a steady rain. And in June, July, August, September, it's still raining. I mean, you can see the highest rainfall is actually July here. So they have all that humidity and all this rain, very different environments.
That's interesting.
As you're looking at what happens with our Northwest rainfall in the winter, get a sip of water here, excuse me. So
This is an exciting lecture. I'm loving it.
Oh, I'm so glad. So we get, if you think about the Northwest, historically, we've had these sort of drizzly days, we get a lot of drizzle. That's changing. With climate change, we're getting more heavy rainfalls, and we always have had them. So you can see that November, that high point in November, often when we're getting those big storm events where you get lots of rain. And the problem with lots of rain is that it's flooding our drain systems, our storm drains. And then in the city of Seattle, we have a combined sewer and storm drain. They're not separate. And so if they overflow sewage into water bodies around us. And so even the rain that's coming through the storm drain is problematic because there's stuff washing off the street, stuff that comes off your roof that goes down the gutter into the storm drain. you could have, there's a lot of bacteria from, animals that are running around on your roof. There could be a zinc or other materials in your roofing materials. There's stuff on the street that's just coming off of cars and a lot of zinc there. Even bicycle pads, the brake pads, dump some zinc into the streets. So, nothing is immune from polluting the streets. And then all that water rushes down into these drains. And it can cause flooding. You've seen, I'm sure, pictures of drains backing up where they're spouting back up. I was up in Victoria, BC one time when that happened. And like everywhere we were going, you would see on every block, there'd be one storm drain that was just like a fountain with the water coming back up because it couldn't control the flow of the water. It was too much for it. So heavy winter rain can cause problems like that. It can cause erosion. So these people who cut all these trees down get a heavy winter rain, that soil can just come down into their other parts of the property. It causes landslides. Puget Sound has a lot of areas along the sound itself where we have sandy soil on top of clay, and then that gets saturated. Sandy soil is very porous, it fills up, and then that hits that clay level, which is really tight. And when water hits two different levels like that, it goes through one level into another. Water has that, as you see in these little drops, it has that capacity to beat up. And so it does that underground. And it takes a minute for it to be able to infiltrate. And the case of sand on clay, it's going to take even longer because clay has so small pore spaces. And so sometimes it can't even absorb it. And then you get this super saturated soil that just slides down the hill because it can't hold its stability. So plants are an important part of this because, as you mentioned, them taking up water, so they take up water. They actually act as a screen to break water drops up so that water doesn't hit the ground so hard. That can help with preventing compaction of the soil as well, but it also disperses the water better, so it's not a lot of water all at once in one spot. And then, as I mentioned, you get more pollutants into local waterways, the heavier the rainfalls are. Seattle's system is built so that everything's supposed to go to treatment, and they did that ages ago, like way, way, way back when they put the sewer systems in. And that in theory sounds great, except for these storm events.
I'd really rather they have really fancy storm drains at the end of every street where it's all built to collect all the water and the snow that melts. It's just a really nice construction.
That's awesome. A lot of times you'll see people putting swales in that help to disperse the water right into that immediate landscape. They put in sort of these wells around trees that are like underground collection basins that slow it down. So the goal of all of this, when people put in rain gardens, rain barrels, cisterns, these swales and tree well systems, these are all, the intent is to slow the water down. And then any pollutants that are in there then get dispersed locally and stay in that soil where it's safer than for them to go into local waterways. So, the Northwest is very good about thinking about all these things, really on top of it. So this is a picture of what happened out at Oso when they had that huge landslide. I mean, look at the scale of this. That was just devastating for people. And
the house is right at the bottom of that.
Yes, yeah, they're under all that. It's pretty scary. So you can see a building over to the left here, still in a little pasture area. It looks like some sort of barn area. But yeah, you can imagine there were houses all up under there. Really, really devastating. And this is the potential for what can happen here if we're not managing things properly. We have to, make sure that our trees are healthy. And, the Forest Service people have lots of challenges with that and how they cut trees. Also in insect issues, if you have an insect that comes through as some sort of bark borer, it can go through and, do a lot of damage.
I saw that Granby National Forest was completely gone with the beetle.
Yeah. So Lots to think about here. And this is, a big example, but this can happen on, small pieces of property as well. Things for people to consider. Water pollution is real. You can see water coming out of this drain pipe, and you can see the sheen of oil in it with the rainbow colors. So this is all stuff coming off of roadways. So a lot of hydrocarbon pollution, as well as heavy metals coming into waterways. So this is where evergreen plants can help. They break up the rain, as I mentioned. They help keep the soil from getting too compacted. They prevent erosion, less pollution goes into waterways, and they shade and cool in the summer. So they're doing all these things. And you see here, this is a rhododendron. So this is a broadleaf evergreen. And then this looks like a spruce in the bottom picture. You can see how the leaves are so wet. The water's on the leaves, it's dripping off of them. There's all these sort of intricate ways the water now needs to get through to the ground. It's not a straight shot, so it's being diverted and broken up. And even on this conifer, the spruce tree, you can see the little water droplets. So even these little tiny needles, this arrangement of needles can help that happen as well. And then this is my favorite thing about what they do. All of those other things are, so important and beautiful. But for me, I really appreciate how they are so integral with our native wildlife and their habitat. They provide this dense all year round foliage. So they provide a lot of nesting sites, roosting sites for sleeping at night, a lot of protection from predators, places they can go to be safe. They can get out of bad weather, get out of the heat, get out of the cold. And even then, they may still get dripped on and get rained on, but there are places under some of those trees where they can stay drier for sure when it's really raining. They provide a ton of food, all kinds of food, to be found on conifers and broadleaf evergreen plants. And then they actually can provide water. And sometimes you'll see birds sort of sipping off of the leaves, where water's collecting. And what we're seeing here is a little nuthatch on the bark of this looks like a Douglas fir. And then I think this might be, I'm not sure what, it might be rhododendron. I think it is a type of rhodie that this hummingbird is nesting in. So she's got her little babies, and these nests are tiny. They're in like little cruxes of the branches, and she builds her nest out of moss and spider silk, which you can sort of see in the construction of it, and lichen, different things like that. So she weaves them all together out of natural things that are sometimes growing on the trees or on the ground, and you now have habitat and have wildlife in your garden. I'm going to just go back for a second. So in terms of providing food, so not only is there, especially a lot of the broadleaf evergreens like the huckleberries I talked about, they have actual fruit or nuts or something, a seed of some sort that they can gather. But they also have lots of insects in them. And so they're hunting for insects. So the nuthatch is going up and down this tree, often looking for little insects. Chickadees do that too. Chickadees feed their young only insects when they're first starting out. And then later, they can be seed gatherers and be getting other kinds of food, fruit, berries. But there are a lot of little critters living in all the cracks of the bark and stuff in here. So they're very adept at hunting all that out. And even hummingbirds are looking for things like that. They eat ants, which is lovely.
All part of that microclimate.
That's right. So, in any given backyard, even if it's just a small one, you have, a habitat. You have, others living with you that you may not even be aware of, sometimes. So this is just looking at a chart of our Northwest native conifers. This is a poster that was available for many years. It could still be. And unfortunately, we can't read this very well here, but you can just see there's a lot of different types of fir. So true fir is different than a Douglas fir. A Douglas fir is Pseudotsuga menziesii. It's whereas firs are Abies, A-B-I-E-S, that's their generic name. So the genera of abies has lots of different kinds. They live at different places in the environment. Some are sea level, some are up in altitude. Then we have a ton of pines. And collectively, these are all in the pine family. They use the pine as the representative of their family. So, you know, but look at knobcone, ponderosa, Jeffreys, sugar pine, western white. I can't read that one. White bark. These are native pines. And then there's lots of pines people plant in their yard that are ornamental. Lodgepole is a really huge, beautiful, you'll see it all across the West. You'll see standing forests of it, like over in Montana. Really amazing plant. Then you have things like the larch, and these are not evergreens. So these guys actually drop their leaves, but they are conifers. They bear cones. And then you even have things like juniper. Lots of people have juniper in their gardens, but there are native juniper plants that grow here. They provide this little arrow berry-like thing that birds will eat. This is also a very classic ingredient in gin, you know, if you are a gin drinker. And then we move into the scaled plants like cedars, and you have thuya, which is the western red cedar, and you have Chamaecyparis as well. Those are two different genus, again, all in the pine family. And the western red cedar, everybody knows very well. And then you have Calocedrus decurrens, which is the incense cedar. And all of these have fragrance, some things more than others. Noble firs, for instance, grand firs, very fragrant. Incense cedar, very fragrant, even western red. And then the Alaska yellow cedar, you'll see all up and down the coast, goes all the way up to Alaska. These are coastal trees, but really important different trees in the environment, and you'll see them as you travel through the state in different places. They grow in different places. And then you have the spruces and the hemlocks down here, and a hemlock, the western hemlock is what they consider the climax species for Western Washington forests. So all things equal, if you just let the forest go to its natural evolution, eventually it becomes a western hemlock forest, because there is a plant succession that happens in landscapes. So if you clear something, you know, there are pioneer species that come in first, and then certain conifers that like more sunlight, like sunlight, like Douglas fir likes the sun better. So you'll find them on slopes facing the west with sword fern, drier soil, sunnier spaces. And then as you get into shadier and shadier conditions, you'll see more hemlock. If there's a lot of moisture, you're going to see a lot more western red cedar. So they're also indicative of what the landscape is bearing. And then here's some examples of some broadleaf evergreens. These are a lot of things that you see in your gardens. Some of the native things would be like the rhododendron. But all of these have importance. You know, there's boxwoods, there's Lakothaway, which is a relative of a rhododendron, kalmias, azaleas. This Japanese akuba takes shade really well and has these beautiful splotchy leaved. You can get green and white or yellow and white. So lots to be had, lots to find in the nurseries that are really beautiful for the garden. And some of these are fruiting plants. You know, you can look to, you know, procuring a lot of natives in particular, if that's what you're interested in, but a lot of these are just fine. And so I have two more questions, and then we're going to look at a little bit of wreath making stuff. So after learning a little more about them, would you incorporate more evergreen plants into your garden? And then what one thing did you learn today that you will put into use in your garden?
Wow, I had no idea this was going to be such a wonderful informational lecture, which I'm really happy about. So yeah, I definitely, what would you incorporate more evergreen plants in your garden? Well, yeah, I planted 25 trees up north. I planted, it's 27 acres. It already has 10 acres of trees, but, and I'm all along the California Creek. So I haven't even begun to even explore, to even see half of what is out there. But I planted a lot of apple and peach and pear and plum and a lot of rhodies and the crab apple and a red twig, dogwood
Mhm.
red twig, and just some trees are just flowering trees. And I planted actually I have squirrels in my neighborhood. Some of my neighbors have walnut trees, and one day a tree was growing in a bucket outside, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I said, you know, you deserve a home. I'm gonna take you up north. And I took the tree up north and planted. It's been growing, and then I did my Google Lens, and it's a walnut tree.
Yeah, I have at least 5 of those in my yard every year. The little seedlings pop up wherever the squirrel has decided to plant walnuts. I don't know where the parent tree is. It's close by, I'm sure, because I'm one of their favorite gardens to plant in. So
Yeah, it was
um,
my neighbor. My neighbor. I didn't know she had a walnut tree, and she does.
yeah,
But I
and
had
it's kind of amazing. They get so big, you can't just leave them. You know, you have to, like you did, find a place for them, which is wonderful.
And then I planted two oak, the Gariana oaks from Whidbey Island, and
Oh,
one,
nice.
one of them it got broken off. I don't know if something will come up again, but the other one seems to be it's been there whole year. It's small. They're expensive, you know,
Hmm.
but it's growing, and so and I want to plant a whole fence line of oak trees. I want to start them from seedling. I don't know. I might not be alive long enough to see that, but I would like to plant a lot more oak. No, maple. I'm sorry, maple trees. I want to plant a whole fence line of maple trees in Kent, Washington, on 64th Avenue. They have this whole street of maple trees, and they planted them zigzag, so you
Oh,
can
sweet.
you can walk through them, and all the leaves fall down, and the beautiful colors. And then what did I learn? Oh my gosh, I learned all about the climate effects with the erosion and landslides and compacting the soil, and that we're having more rain issues, and then the gas exchange. And I kind of always knew about the keeping things cooler, but I didn't know so much about blocking the wind and everything. I didn't know about warming the air, blocking. It's a shelter for the snow and the rain, winter. Yeah, I didn't have a very big piece of paper. I would have taken a lot more notes.
Well, you'll have the recording, so you can also go back and
Oh, thank you
gather.
so much. That's wonderful. Are you teaching in the schools?
Pardon?
Are you teaching in the schools?
No, I don't. I don't. I'm with Tilth Alliance, and the Garden Hotline is a program that is funded by Seattle Public Utilities and the Hazardous Waste Management Program in King County. And our job is to teach people about resource conservation and pesticide reduction in a nutshell. And so we do that in these ways by, encouraging people to put good practices to use in their gardens, and giving people information that's helpful to make plant choices, to make choices about how they would manage pests, to build habitat, because that can help you manage pests. The more birds you have, the more insects they'll eat. So you don't have to worry about them so much. So that's our role. And so we do this. We go around and teach people. We also have a garden hotline. You can call us if you have questions. So if you have anything you want to find out more about, just call us. I think it's at the end of this. So you'll see our contact info in a sec. And I think if you get the sheets from Elizabeth, that has our info on them too.
Yeah, I think you guys came and taught me about the red wiggler and the composting at Marlene's once.
Yes. Yeah, we've done that. Lots of years we've been doing that. Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So here's some examples of wreaths that have been made in classes that we've taught in hands-on. The gentlemen on the left these are East African elders who work at the Rainier Beach Urban Farm and Wetlands with us. They have been involved in that property since we started farming it. It's a farm and a wetland area, so we do restoration, and we have a farm, we have a pollinator garden. Behind them is the educational room, the ed room, the classroom. And they do a meal 2 days a week down there that has wonderful food for their elders group. So it's part of what they call sort of a roving senior community center that goes to different sites, different days, and they're at the farm twice a week. And they chose to make these, hats and headdresses that they could wear that they were excited about. So you can see on the left, the gentleman in green, the form he's using is a willow branch that was cut green and woven together to make a wreath. So you can take things like willow branches and make a form with them. You can take the evergreens all by themselves and just wrap them around, together to make a form. That's what's going on with this one. I don't think this one had a form under it. I think we were just wrapping branches around each other and making a circle with them. And then you can see in this wreath in the bottom picture, there's a lot of other things added to it. You could take pieces of that evergreen huckleberry. This broadleaf leaf here is bay. So this is coming out of a bay tree that's at the Good Shepherd Center Garden in Wallingford. And then there were different things. Might be some rosemary. I have a ton of rosemary on my parking strip that can be used. And up above, this was a little wreath we made with folks in an apartment house in South Lake Union area. And she used very simple materials. And this is on a little, sort of like a little willow wreath form. And the dollar store used to sell these. They haven't, this year I couldn't find them. And then again, this big wreath, I think, is this one that was being made on the left here. So those are just examples of the kinds of things you can do. You can get as creative as you want. You can have things stick out from the edges, or you can wrap them more tightly and make them neat, kind of your choice. And then here's our information about who we are and how to find us. So we have a website that has a contact page. We have a phone number you can just call, or you can email us, your choice.
I didn't get your name.
My name is Laura.
L.
A-U-R-A.
Okay, and what's your last name?
Matter, M-A-T-T-E-R.
Okay, Laura, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I learned so much.
So if you want, I have a little video showing how to make a wreath. See if we can play it.
Okay.
Um,
I want to go
we have
visit the Rainier Beach Farm and wetlands.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's like a beautiful place.
I have a lot of wetlands up north, and that's why nobody wanted it. It was a bankruptcy. They have no idea what they missed out on.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it took me a whole year to get it, 4 attorneys. It was a public bidding offer, but I got lucky because it was all during COVID, so everything was closed. So I only had one person outbid me, and then I overbid them, and then they backed out, and so then I got it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will take a second to get this QuickTime player up. I didn't want to like have it up while I was trying to show the PowerPoint because my computer gets cranky.
Yeah. So you were saying the little birdie, he made the nest out of the moss and the lichen.
Like the lichen was growing on the shrub, but they often use lichen as well. But you could see the lichen on the branches. So sometimes the nests are like woven with like dry grass and moss, and usually a lot of moss, and then lichen mixed in, and they hold it together. They bind it with the spider silk, which has a tackiness to it, and so they go and collect spider webs, and then they blend this all together. It's kind of fascinating. I've never seen them do it. I would love to have that opportunity, but I see what they've made. Here we go.
Interesting about the spider silk. So the property has 3 houses on it, and I named them the birdhouse, the center house, and the cabin house. And in the center house, there were these big bird nests on all 3 corners of the house, and everybody said, take them down. I said, no way. So the first year, nothing happened. The second year, the sparrows came and they built them up higher and enclosed them. And 2 of them had babies that I watched all summer
Oh.
with them feeding their babies, flying in and out with their food in their mouth. And then the babies kept poking their heads out and watching me and looking at me. And then one by one, the babies flew out and flew away. And it was just remarkable.
Were they sparrows or
I
swallows?
think they were swallows.
Okay. We used to get swallows on a porch when I was a kid. My dad was in the Army and we lived at Fort Lawton, which is now Discovery Park in Seattle. And we had one of those houses with a big porch, and they would build nests every summer on the porch somewhere. So we got to watch them.
They've been there, but they used them again.
Yes, they do. Okay, so I turned the volume down on this because there is no like dialogue, but it was filmed on a very windy day. So the wind noise is really strong. So I want to make sure, can you see the action now?
Yeah, she's got her
Okay.
branch.
Looks great.
So she's taking a red stem dogwood or willow. I can't remember what she was using here, but the red stem dogwood stems will work as well, and you get that color. Or you can use willow, and basically you cut it green and you just form it. If you wait too long and let it dry, it'll snap on you.
Yeah,
But you just form it, and then you can take pieces of, in this case, she's got a cedar bough, and she's just wrapping it around the thing. You have all those little sticks sticking out. And like I said, you can, let those stick out. You can trim them. You could weave them in, whatever you want. These wreaths can be aesthetically however anybody likes them. And I like the wild looking ones.
Oh yeah, the wild natural ones, definitely.
You see, she has a pair of pruners there. So you can cut these, into the pieces you need. If she didn't want to use that double piece, she could trim it out and just use one side. What you see laying in the foreground, that broadleaf evergreen, that's the bay tree from the garden. So she's in our children's garden at the Good Shepherd Center, but the bay tree came from the other garden that's back behind her, outside the fence area.
I've been to the Good Shepherd. I've walked that whole place. It's beautiful.
And then there's rosemary in the front, laying on the front to the left, which she almost picked up. Now she's using pipe cleaners. You can also use, wire, just thin gauge wire to do this with. You see, if you're good at, you can hide the pipe cleaner. It's easier to work with, but it's also more visible, but you can hide it into the foliage and cover it over. You can also do like how she's twisted it. She's left it a little bit open because potentially you could add something else to that same piece of pipe cleaner as you're building this wreath. So you can leave it sort of open. She's wrapping some rosemary in there.
I didn't even think that you could just use a branch for the circle.
Right. You can, buying a form makes it easier to do, but if you have enough materials, this is a really fast and easy way to make a little wreath.
And it's a lot more natural.
It is. That's why I liked those wood wreaths I used to get at Dollar Tree, because they were just wood, natural. I think they might have been willow as well, and they pre-made them and then sold them dry, so you have a little form and it's all wood.
I have a huge holly tree out there, but there's no red berries on it, and I found out that they're dioecious, which means you have to have a male and female. So, but I don't know if that tree is the male or the female. I don't know.
Well, it's probably the male if you don't ever see berries on it, so the female would have the fruit on it. And it's probably just as well. So the American or the English holly trees are pests in our forest. They displace other natural, native trees. So that's probably a good thing. But you can still benefit from that foliage. Those are pretty to use in wreaths. They're
But
prickly.
I want the red berries on this huge holly tree. So should I plant a female holly tree to help it pollinate it?
No, I wouldn't, because there she is, with her bow on it, finished it. Aw.
Beautiful.
I wouldn't do that, because they're really on the noxious weed list, these kinds of trees, the English hollies. But there are other kinds of holly you can plant that look a little different. They may have a leaf that's similar. They may be more shrubby, that do get fruit, and you do want a male and female of those. And there are some that are good for the landscape and aren't going to be problematic. Birds spread them everywhere and then they take over. I'm just going to show you some of the materials. So here's this little paddle of wire that just comes off the spool. So that's really easy. You can cut that with your pruners. And so any pair of pruners will work, and this will cut wire easily. Some of them, this one doesn't, but if you have fancy pruners, like the Felco pruners with the red handles that cost like, $60, they usually have a wire cutter down in the anvil, or down here where the anvil closes. These are Fiskars. These are decent. I got these at Home Depot. I needed a new pair. This is the little wire wreath that the Dollar Tree has. It's concave on one side, so you can sort of fill it on that side. It has the wires at different levels, so that you can run wire through this back part and then around the stuff you have in the bowl of it. This is what we've been using. And then there's tons of kinds of ribbon. A lot of people have ribbon. We cut it in about, I think we cut these in 2-foot lengths. And, for bigger wreaths, you can do bigger ones, but you can make a bow with them. These have the wire edges, so it folds. You can make it do different things, make it sort of crimp up. You can wrap it all around the wreath form. If you want, it can go sort of around and over and through, however you want, so that you can have some greens on it and then a pretty ribbon. You could, if I were going to do that with a wreath form this size, I get a thinner ribbon, so I didn't cover all my greenery up. You can also use twine. And so I use the twine a lot for making the holders. And basically you just cut a piece from the twine, and with pruners you have to kind of gnaw at it. You cut across it like this, because unless you have a pair of scissors, which is easier to do. And then I just take it and put a little knot in the bottom of it. And then once I have that together, when I want to hang my wreath, I can just wrap it through there. And now I have a little hanger for it.
Okay.
So that's like some of the simpler ways to do all this. Super easy to do, super fun to do with friends, fun to do with your family, by yourself. Cup of hot chocolate. I did a class 2 days ago with a group of folks that live in a subsidized apartment housing site here in West Seattle called Admiral House. And it was really sweet. The person who is the volunteer coordinator and does activities with the residents made a big pot of hot chocolate, and she had cookies, and even, there was one guy who showed up who rarely attends any of the community events, and he got intrigued by the plants themselves, and then had the bonus of finding out that he got cookies and hot chocolate too. But it was really great, because he was really like, oh, what is all this? Why are you working with like all this evergreen stuff? And so where we get it is from, and here's a sample of what we're working with. So we have these boughs these are pieces, these are branches that came off the bottom of a Christmas tree at Home Depot. So you can get this stuff for free at Home Depot. You just go where they're cutting the Christmas trees, and oops, let me hold that for a sec. And they have a big, usually a garbage, well, the one in Federal Way had a garbage can. The one up here in my neighborhood in West Seattle has a big, huge bin because they do so many tree sales. And it was full the day I went, so I was able to get a lot. You know, I cut them down. And so what I did for Elizabeth was cut them down into smaller pieces like this, and then bundled them together so people could get their bundle. How many people picked those up?
So
I picked them up.
You did?
Yeah.
Right.
yes, and there was a couple people. There was one gal that wasn't able to make it due to work. So I'm gonna be sending everyone the PowerPoint and all the paperwork. And Penny, you'll see that in an email.
Really appreciate your time, Laura. It's been fabulous webinar. I loved it. It's
So
me
I take things like this and just cut them too, just as one last little detail. So you can, you know, just cut pieces off, and now this would be good enough to use on a small wreath.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could scale this up, or even do little small guys.
Yep, you can do any size you want, depending on what material you have. The Christmas tree branches can be thick, you know, the wood is thick, so they're not as flexible unless you get big, long pieces, which you can then bend around a bit. But yeah, super fun. You know, you can reflect on the value of the trees that you're working with when you do this, because these trees are super important.
Yeah. I want to learn how to make the garlands. I've tried
Yeah,
it, not really good at it, to get some help on that.
yeah, you know what you should do is inspect the garlands you see at the stores and see what they've done with them, because those are wired together throughout the whole thing. So like at the end of the year when you take it apart, you definitely see the guts of it, because all of the dead plant material is falling out, and you see all the wire, or sometimes it's twine that's sort of wrapped around it as it goes, so that it will hold together in one piece. But they're having to attach the bases of the branches, you know, or the bough to each other. So it is a wonderful, garlands are wonderful because it's this illusion of this big, long, continuous strand that's actually multiple stems woven together.
Right. Yeah. I haven't figured out if you keep like all the wooden part of the branch all facing one direction, or if you put two wooden parts together. I've played around with it. It's not easy, but I'm sure if I keep working at it, I'll master it someday.
Yeah, I think that's one reason they use cedar, because then they put it all facing the same direction, the upside of the branch,
Okay.
because the backside is not as aesthetically pleasing, and it's flat. So it's really easy to manipulate because it's a flat branch rather than thing with a bunch of, you know, round needles all around the stem and sticking in all directions. The cedars that's why they're often made of cedar.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. The cedar. Okay, yeah, I don't think I used the cedar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cedar for the garland. Okay.
One thing I didn't mention that I'm going to just throw out there too is that a lot of these trees, these conifers, have buds on them as they're starting, you know, late in winter and then in early spring, just when people are getting lots of colds and things. So the tips of the buds are actually have, you know, you can gnaw on them, and they help to soothe your throat if you have a sore throat or a cold. The aromatic oils in the trees themselves are useful for that. And that was, you know, indigenous folks who, you know, lived here for 10,000 years knew that, used them. That was a big part of the, you know, winter care regimen. So, but you can do that. I mean, these trees are all safe. I would avoid the broadleaf trees. Some of them are poisonous, so don't worry about those. But it's the conifers, the fir, the Doug fir, cedar. Well, cedar doesn't have so much, but spruce, those buds, but especially the fir trees.
Nice. That's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's so amazing all that evergreens do. I just thought that they were beautiful to look at and that they stayed green all year, but they provide so much to the environment. Thank you
I
so
know.
much, Laura.
They're super important. I can't imagine if the Northwest, if we didn't have as many as we do. I mean, you can see, heat effects that happen in cities where trees are cut down. So even deciduous trees are important in the summertime because they provide that cooling effect as well. And then cities are hotter where there are no trees. But these conifers are year round doing something for us. It's a continual process.
I do feel there's quite a lot of disinformation out there. People just don't realize how, the benefits. And you see the clear cutting, then, it's 50 homes in 5 acres, 50 homes, they clear 50. I mean, and even up in Blaine in Bellingham, they took out it was 25 acres and they put in 100 new apartments and homes and everything on H Street right there in Blaine. It's they just do this constantly. I just feel like all this education needs to be taken to the schools.
Yeah. Yes. And it's unfortunate because you can develop in a way that saves some of that. Then they come back in, they take all this topsoil away, and there are soil standards that developers have to follow where they need to bring good soil back in to a higher level. Often they just kind of dust it with some fresh soil, and they've dug down to this hard, soil that is impossible to garden in. And then people put a lawn over that, and then that just sits there and dies because it can't set roots properly. And then they put small scale trees in, things that don't have the same value in terms of, environmental benefits, which is unfortunate.
Exactly. Yeah.
There was a development that happened many years ago up in North Seattle on Aurora, right off Aurora, where Oak Tree Village is right now. There's a movie theater there, and there was a Ralph's Market there for a long time, and I think it's an Asian grocery store now, but it was an old school ground, and it had a bunch of oak trees on it that were full grown, and they cut them all down and built this, shopping mall and called it Oak Tree Village.
Oh, gee.
Which is a sort of a slap in the face, unfortunately.
Oh,
That's very sad.
That's awful. That's awful. Well, even over here by Winco, there's a huge development going in over there where they've just taken down all the trees on about at least 5 acres off of 348.
I was
yeah,
wondering
really
what that was.
Yeah, we have quite still a lot of pockets of forest around here, but slowly they will be all bought out. And I think that's the fault of the city planners. They need to stop that and not allow that, or make it smaller, or like you say, don't ruin the topsoil and leave some of those, build around those big old trees.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's cheaper to do that, and they get benefit. Like you said, you can sell the trees that you cut down and all that.
Oh yeah. So when I bought my house over on 295th Place, 288th and Military 35 years ago, there was like 20 acres at the end of my street, and within months it was all decimated with 100 homes were put in just within months, and that was 30 years ago. And yeah,
it's hard.
it is hard. It breaks my heart. I love the trees, and I believe in all these things, and they're all true, and I just think we need to get it into the schools somehow.
There is definitely education in the schools, but you're right, we're educating our upcoming, the youth to pay attention, and they are, there's a lot of there's a lot of passion around environmental needs in the youth that I know. And I don't know, maybe I have a biased group of youth that I know, but in general, even people that aren't associated with TILF, with where I work, family and their grandkids, and just hearing what they're up to is kind of encouraging that they're paying attention.
So this TILF Alliance, do they actually have a physical place where they're located?
Yeah, so our office is here at the Good Shepherd Center, or there in that picture. I'm looking at the picture. You guys don't see it anymore. So in that video, the children's garden is right outside the building, and our offices are right there.
Yeah.
We also have an office building at the Rainier Beach Urban Farm down in Rainier Beach.
Okay.
And that's smaller. So it's the people that work there routinely who have their desks down there. Mine is up at the Good Shepherd Center, and I work at home. So I do both. And then sometimes I'm down at the farm as well, but I don't have a desk there. I would just like work in the little conference room area. Or I'm doing something physically on the farm itself, like I'm working in the pollinator garden or something. That's our work that we do at the hotline. And it's a wonderful space. It's nice to visit any time of year. In the summertime, though, there's the production farm with tons of things being grown. There's a pick farm, so you can pick things and you just weigh them and log them, so we know how much was grown and how much got taken. There's sort of a children's garden area. There's a permaculture garden that's all more perennial edible plants. There's a flower field that's grown by the market program folks. There's a farm stand that happens every Thursday from June to September in the afternoon. And they sell their flowers at the stand. There's a pumpkin patch, usually pumpkin and squash patch. And then those East African elder folks that I showed you with the wreath picture, they have their own gardening area where they grow food for themselves to take home. And then there's all the wetlands areas, and there's pathways through lots of that. They're also connected to Beersheba Park on one side, and you can walk from Beersheba, which is on the lake and across from Rainier Beach High School, through our farm, out our farm to the property across the street, which used to be Seattle City Lights Plant Nursery, where I worked many years ago. And that was converted to a wetland park. You can walk all the way through that and then out the other side and go to Pritchard Beach Park, which is a swimming beach. So you've got like this whole chain of parks you can walk through. People bring their dogs through, they bicycle through. And then we're doing a March plant sale this year, which is we haven't done in many, many years. Usually our big plant sales in May up at the Good Shepherd Center, but we're going to do one at the farm in March on the 19th, I think, 17th, 18th, 19th, somewhere. It's a Saturday in the middle of March. And we'll have all the early veggies for sale then. But lots of activities there. It's just a wonderful place. Lots of community groups. We have some greenhouses that we finally have been outfitting so that we can grow more starts in them. One of them will have in the ground plants. So we will have, things that they can grow bigger and that need more heat. And then the other greenhouse is going to be a community-based greenhouse where we invite other community groups to come start their own starts. So really, really cool spot.
That's wonderful.
It just sounds like a paradise.
It is actually. It's quite beautiful down there. I mean, anytime you're there, something's happening. We have a coyote that comes through the property. So there's a resident coyote that you see herons, eagles, osprey all the time, swallows in the summertime, all other kinds of birds, red-winged blackbirds, tons of those. Just really rich environment. It was a Parks Department plant nursery, and so there's a lot of their stock still sort of standing as sort of foresty areas that have become forest. Even though all the plants are sort of in a row, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, very interesting historical site.
So if I wanted to find more about the Bathsheba Park or the Birchwood swimming area, I would just go to the Tilth Alliance.
So if you want to know about Beersheba and Pritchard Beach Swimming Park, go to the Seattle Parks Department website,
Okay,
because
okay.
those are their parks. And that also that wetland park across the street is the Seattle Parks. Seattle Parks owns this property that we farm on and have the restoration work on. So we have an arrangement with them to be on the property, and we manage it along with a group called Friends of Rainier Beach Urban Farm and Wetland, who are neighbors and other interested people to have this sort of urban ag center in the city. So it's a co-managed site with a lot of other community groups who participate or have programming on site that we're not in charge of, that they come and use space to do.
Oh,
One
that's
really
amazing. Community.
Carkeek.
Carkeek Park has its own stuff going on. It has a salmon bearing stream. It's right on the water on the beach. It's got an apple orchard, or I think it's apples. It's got an apple orchard. And it has an environmental learning center and lots of woodland areas. And that's part of Seattle Parks.
Okay. So the Friends of the Rainier Beach Farm and Wetlands are that's separate though from Seattle Parks, right?
It's owned by Seattle Parks. They're the landowner, but we manage it. So you might see something on their website about it, but it would lead you to the Tilth website because we manage the information about the site and the
activities and the
and the communication about all the things that are going on. There's also a harvest festival in the summer that they do usually in July. They're celebrating, growing food.
nice.
They're going to do, I think, a seed swap this year as well.
A what swap?
A seed swap. So we were discussing whether we do it at the same time as a plant sale, and I think we decided to have them separate events. So the seed swap is a more grassroots, like, you bring your seeds, other people bring seeds, and you just, people trade. You don't have to bring seeds, you can come get free seeds. But there'll be some activities around that and some education, and it's a way to share seeds. Often, you buy seeds. You might buy a pack of lettuce seed and it has thousands of seeds in it, and then you decide that wasn't your favorite lettuce, so you can bring it to an event like this and give it away. Seeds have viability for a few years, so if it was last year's seed, it'll still be good this year. Or maybe you just have too much of it and you want to divide out because you're only going to use 20 plants and you don't need to plant 1,000. Basil can come, the smaller seeds can come in like multiples. So sharing is always helpful for folks. And this became very important during the pandemic. In 2020, there was a seeds shortage. So people couldn't find seeds because everybody was deciding to garden because they were home, and quarantined. And they said, oh, I'm going to start a garden. And I saw new gardens pop up just on my block that I'd never seen before. And people bought too many seeds because they didn't know. They'd never done it. So they bought like 3 packets of lettuce seed where one would have been enough. And then that meant 2 other people didn't get to buy lettuce seed, So some of the seed companies like Johnny's, who sells to a lot of farmers across Washington State, even, they limited their seed sales to farmers for a while, wouldn't let the public buy until they could get more stock back in, because farmers had to have, they have to have seed or they can't grow food for us, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, it was really interesting. I haven't seen that. I didn't see it much last year, and I haven't seen that yet this year.
Facebook is full of the Great Depression and being self-sufficient off the land and being able to forage for wild foods. I get like 6 or 7 websites on Facebook a day trying to teach people not to depend on a store, because when the shelves are empty and there's a crisis, you better know how to go into the woods and get some food.
Right. Well, Tilt teaches classes like that too. So we have wild, how to know which weeds are edible in particular. That's one of the things, but just foraging. We do some foraging classes, some with our staff, but also we bring other experts in to teach those as well.
Yeah.
And then just in general, people growing their own food. Like if you know how to grow food, you can have something back there. I still have, chard in my garden. I still have some, a broccoli plant. So I have those things I can go pick from. My lettuce is still doing okay. It hasn't died yet. It can sometimes when it gets too cold, but I have little lettuce plants. And I did a big harvest of those right before the snow came. So I made sure that I had them.
You can
You
put all
can
your broccoli
peas in.
into Elizabeth's egg frittata.
Yes, yum. Exactly.
That's so cool. That's nice. That's good that you can grow and have a garden. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So much to know, so much to keep learning.
Definitely, definitely. Well, mine's a wildlife sanctuary and wilderness preservation. I am I am on a salmon run.
Nice.
But I'm trying to start a lot of wonderful things, but I still live and work down here in Auburn.
Yeah. That's a
So
commitment.
yeah, I've been going back and forth for 2 years, and it's 120 miles each way, going back
Ooh,
and forth. Been going back and forth every week for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I kind of backed off this winter because I don't have I didn't get utilities. If I would have had utilities, it would have been $500,000. I
Oh,
got
wow.
Yeah, I got it pretty cheap because it doesn't have utilities. But I've been hand watering for the last 2 years, and it's been really, really physically hard on me to carry the containers. So I'm working with Puget Sound Energy and my water share that I own. I'm trying to get my utilities, the trench and bringing in the water and the electric. I'm trying to get that done before next summer so I can have
Yeah.
water. Yeah.
I don't know the conservation district up there very well, but have you contacted them about programming that they do?
Yeah, I did contact them. The CREPS program, Conservation Restorative Environmental Protection Program, was out there 20 years ago, and they did plant a lot of trees, which isn't the forested area, but it's all the other trees all over the place that they put
Awesome.
in. Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course I'm leaving all of them, so they won't do it twice. I did get my open space, farm and agriculture, conservation, preservation classification. I had to fight for that. I got that, and then I really wanted to get some berries on this holly tree, but I appreciate the information about them being on the
Yeah.
noxious list, and to put not the English holly, but a different type of holly. But
Yeah.
but
Look at the different
red
types.
berries. How do you get the red berries though?
Yeah, they do. Some of them have red berries. So some of them are darker, blue or blacker berries. It depends on the species, but you can look for those. There are other alternatives to holly that look like holly. What is
So
that
do I
called?
want English? Do I want English holly or I don't?
You do not want English holly. And what
Gotcha.
you can do is look at the state of Washington noxious plant list,
Yes,
which
yes.
will cover the whole state. And then for each county, King County will have one, and then
Okay.
Whatcom County should have one.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that's funny. That's funny you mentioned about the birds and the seeds and it growing, because I have 2 in my yard in Auburn, and now I have like 4 other ones all coming up from what the birds have dropped, and they're all coming up.
yeah.
But I think if I keep them short and cut them, they'll be okay. Don't let them grow too big.
Yeah. And the male holly, if there's a female around, it's contributing to the problem by having the pollen that's pollinating the female, which will create the berries. If there's no female around, the male holly is, kind of innocuous because it can't do any reproduction.
Right.
But yeah, it just depends on what's in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to sell the holly, but what you could do is just take the male and just get an artificial red berry and twist it in the branch and then sell it like that.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, people won't care and tell them it's for their wreaths and stuff, and their mantles and their garlands they're gonna make.
There you
So I'm
go.
trying to think of the name. I'm not seeing it in this list, but there's another plant that looks, oh, okay, so here's some of the recommended holly alternatives. There's some of them that grow a little more columnar. They're called blue boy, blue girl, blue prince, blue princess. Those guys all have berries. They have,
Okay.
so here's like the picture.
Oh, that's
Let's see, I can't see.
beautiful. Oh yeah.
So it's showing it, you know, that's the same look that you're going for.
Yeah,
And
and
all of
they're
those,
not on the noxious list.
they're not on the noxious list. I'm looking on this
nice.
on my phone.
So they're all blue something. Oh, blue something.
Yeah, they're called, I'll type the name in here in the chat. So you have the actual name, species name you're looking for.
Okay.
Messer.
Chat. Here's the chat. And the 3 dots. You got to hit the 3 dots to save it. I don't know
Okay,
if
so there's the ilex name, Messer BA.
okay.
And then some of the varietal names are like blue boy,
Yeah.
blue girl. And so these would be, you would want blue boy and blue girl in order to get the berries.
Yeah.
Those are
Blue
the two
girl,
that go
okay.
together.
All right.
And then there's blue prince and blue princess.
Okay.
And I have one of those. I can't remember. I think I have the blue princess because I think my little one gets some berries. So it's possible also that other hollies can pollinate them, I think. So I don't think it's too dependent on having just the one. But if you don't know what you have in your neighborhood, it's good to get both.
Okay. Usually on my computer, I can save the chat with those 3 little dots, but I don't see that on my phone. But
Penny, I will be sending
Yeah.
this information in the email.
okay, dear. Okay, the Garden Hotline, Seattle Gov, and then the blue boy, blue girl, yeah, blue prince, blue princess. Oh, nice, awesome. That's
So
great.
this plant called Osmanthus heterophyllus, it doesn't have the red berries, but it has those same spiky leaves. It's not at all invasive. It's a little
Okay.
slower growing, so it's a little, you know, it's really well behaved. The flowers can be fragrant on some of these species, some of these. It can grow up to about 15 feet. And there's some that have sort of purplish leaves. So some really interesting alternatives, purpureus, and then goshiki is, I think, this one that we
Okay.
were looking at.
And I want to invite you guys, both of
Ooh.
you, up to my property if you ever want to come up and visit me at Birch Bay. I'm only 2
That would be
miles.
wonderful.
Yeah, I'd love you to come. I'm only 2 miles from Birch Bay.
Oh, you're so sweet, Penny.
I'm off the grid up there, but and I've really enjoyed it. I talked to one lady at work the other day. She says, "Oh, I can't live off the grid." I said, "Believe me, it's so beautiful. You can.
Yes. Oh
You
yeah.
can do it.
You can. Propane and a propane stove and you know, ice chest, and you bring in your own water, and you know it's all doable."
Yeah, and that kind of thing too, like when we had this snow we just had, there were 3 areas in Seattle that lost power. I happened
Yeah.
to be in one of them
Oh.
because we had to move out of our property or out of our house for about a week because the bathroom floor was being redone and we only have one bathroom. So we got an Airbnb down in White Center area, and that was one of the areas that lost power.
Oh,
And that would have
shoot.
been real nice to have propane. You know, they didn't have anything like that. Everything was electric. And so we had no heat. We had no way to cook. Fortunately, it was mostly overnight. So it was, you know, not a total hardship. But, you know, those are things to consider, you know,
Oh, yeah.
having alternatives.
Yeah, I've got wood stoves in all 3 of the houses, and one of the things I'm trying to do is clean out underneath every tree so that if a forest fire were to ever go through there, it would just keep moving and get to the water and stop, and the trees would not, you know, catch on fire.
Right. And those are the types of things that Cattleman's Winter School talks
Oh,
about. is
yeah.
things like how to manage for fire, climate change, the
Yeah.
forest, but there are several forest homeowner or forest landowner classes, I think, that you might benefit from checking out.
Oh, yeah. If you can put that website on there for me, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah,
I
let
already
me,
got
You think there'll be some, and I go past Stanwood area all the way there.
you
I'm
do. Yes, you
Yeah.
do.
Yes, I am. So, they have winter classes this winter.
Yeah, so it'll be in January. They just do it once a year when everybody's sort of in their one of the down periods.
And this year it's going to be at their new high school.
It's at the new built high school. It's finally finished and being
Nice.
used. They used
Nice.
to do it at the old one, which was sort of what do you call that? They had all the classrooms were like you had to walk outside between them.
Oh, yeah,
And
that
they
was just
were
like
sort of
federal. It's just
Portable.
like federal
Satellite.
schools.
portable type
Yeah.
settings. They were all attached. So it was like this big spoke, thing where everything was attached. And they were covered walkways, but still you go out in the cold between them all. So I'm
Yeah.
just bringing this website up and I'll give you the.
Yeah, Federal Way's been changing. I'm a school nurse at Federal Way's public schools, and they've been building new schools. They got a lot of grant money, and they're changing that outdoor California.
Yeah, that's definitely a California style.
And it's like it doesn't work up here. The kids are freezing.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Thank you so much.
Country Living Expo and Cattleman's Winter School. We call it Cow School for short.
Are you gonna
Um,
go? Are you gonna go?
I'm not sure. I was looking at the classes this morning and we have the Garden Hotline is on a sort of cyclical contract situation. So we just signed a new contract for the next 2 years, and yay. And we're working with some new subcontractors who will be doing work with us. That a lot of that gets set up in January. So it's intensive, like contract writing and, deciding what our work plan is going to be and setting schedules for everybody. And I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll have 6 staff, I think. We'll have an intern, and then we have all these subcontractors, like 5 subcontractors. So it's a big team of people that coordinate. So I'm kind of in my mind thinking, if I commit to this, I might be too tired to want to drive up there and actually do it. I might want my Saturday just to be quiet. It's very fun though, because you meet people you didn't even know you would be going to this thing that and they have some great teachers. This time they're let's see if I can find it. They're keynote speakers. One of them is this guy who does horse back riding races. He does horse racing. Like it's like cross country racing. And I think he was in Mongolia when he did this. And then another woman who has kayaked from Puget Sound up to Alaska by herself.
Wow.
So they're kind of like, they bring in, really interesting people. They brought in several years, they brought in, oh gosh, her name is escaping me. The woman who, she's autistic and she has done the work with cattle to how you calm cattle down.
She's a cattle whisperer.
Yes. And so she was amazing. But they have really interesting keynote people that are one of the classes you can attend. So you can choose to do that.
Nice.
Yeah,
I've heard about this Washington State University extension program for years, but I never really knew how to get involved with it or how to take a class, or I guess I just never had any time. I've just been so busy. I'm on my 47th year of nursing and I'm still working as a nurse, and but yeah, Washington State University is pretty active in all this stuff.
They are, and each county has its own extension agent, and So this is the Skagit County WSU folks who are, managing this event. So they have their master gardeners, they have a 4-H group. They have, the canning information. So people work with food preservation and health and wellness programming. And each county does that. And so these guys, this is the Skagit County folks. And then there's all the agriculture work. And of course, Skagit County and Whatcom County are real big, lots of farming up there. So they're very active in those areas. And that's one of the reasons they do it up there, is so it's easy for farmers to get to these classes. And the range of what they're talking about, some of it's great for, if I just want to learn how to felt wool and make little pictures out of, wool, I can do that, or how to make a felt hat out of a knit hat that I make. Or you can learn how to make sourdough bread. So you can, people who aren't farming can also benefit from the programming that they do.
That's wonderful. That is so great to know. Thank you.
There are also, in each county, you can find classes based, master gardeners often are offering educational format for you.
Give us your email, Laura. So if I have questions and how to find things, I can ask you, because you sound like you're a good person for helping people to refer people to what they're looking for.
Oh yes, Laura is the best, and we're very grateful to have her and Garden Hotline with us. And we have several great classes planned for next year.
Yeah,
Excited.
we're gonna do one every 2 months, so like bi-monthly through the year.
I would like to have one every month.
Yeah, it's beyond my bandwidth this coming year. But every other month will work. We'll get a lot of content together.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
So much, Laura.
Thank you so much.
Penny, you'll notice too, another place for you to visit. On that page for Country Living Expo, if you scroll down on the left, there's a menu. They have the Mount Vernon Research and Extension Center. So that's a place the public can go. They have public days. They do classes there. But they're actually researching things there, how to grow winter wheat, how to grow fruit trees. We've done a tour there. They did one where they had like the high tunnels, the big enclosures. They're open on each end, but they're like big greenhouses where they were growing tomatoes inside of them. And then they grew the exact same tomatoes in the same configuration right outside. And they were testing whether covering them protects them from blight. They also had some landscape fabric on the ground to protect the soil from splashing. And so they did discover that there was no blight in the greenhouse, and the ones outside in the field got totally decimated by lake blight. And so they're researching things like that to see, how to combat diseases and insects, and especially how to do it without using chemicals. So lots of great research going on there that you can go learn about. Grape culture, fruit tree culture.
Now, what's the Country Living? Who are they through?
So it's on that link I gave you. If you look at the WSU EDU Skagit Country Living Expo website, there's a menu on the left side, and down at the bottom of that, it says Mount Vernon Research and Extension Center. So you want to go there.
And
That's a whole nother world.
I will have that in the email. So
Extension Center. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, we are blessed in Washington State with many educational resources, people doing good work, doing a lot of research on, how to grow food right and how to expand what we're growing here, because it's important to keep as much local food as possible, less, travel of food. The fact that we grow lots of wheat in Eastern Washington, a lot of that gets sent away from Washington State because it's an export, but you can grow wheat on the west side. So there are people doing that. And it's a different quality of wheat. The kinds of wheat you use to make bread matter. So it can be very interesting.
I would love to learn how to make the sourdough. I love sourdough.
Yum. Mm-hmm.
That's the best. Yeah, that's interesting that, yeah, a lot of things we do, we give them to other countries because we get more money for them, like apples and
Right.
wheat, and trees are lumber.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. They pay more. They're willing to pay more.
It's an economy.
A brutal economy. Well, I've really enjoyed my day so much. I really enjoyed, this has been a real godsend because, you know, I'm taking a career shift change in my life. You know, I've been a nurse for 50 years and I want to go into other passions, endeavors, and aspirations. And this has actually been always in my soul, in my DNA, my whole life, but didn't know it because I, you know, got my RN when I was 20. And so,
Wow.
and you know, who has time to really know what you want, you know, and love to do when you're that young, right?
Right. Right.
But it's always been there. From a lot of relatives that live in South Dakota, and I took the train there when I was 8 and did the farming with them. To I watched a movie when I was a kid that really changed my life. It was called The Good Earth. Have you ever seen that movie? And it was made in the 1950s.
Yeah.
The Good Earth. It's a really good movie, really old, but totally as a child impressioned me. And then just, you know, my own property here in Auburn, just always have loved the property and the trees and you know, just everything about it. And then my dream, I've always had a dream for land till, you know, I finally got my land. And so it's like always been there. And I was a Boy Scout leader for 10 years. And
Wow.
I'm always in the parks. I've been at Steel Lake, you know, with my dogs and, you know,
Yeah.
celebrating the park and you know, just always on the urban trail, the bunny trail, you know, just always outdoors. But now it's getting to the point where I can really get into making it, you know, much more than that. And that's really exciting, a second career.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Well,
Thank
good for
you.
you, Penny. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I'm trying, I'm working hard. I really appreciate you, Elizabeth, and all
I
your,
appreciate you too, Penny. Thank you.
yeah,
And thank you so much, Laura. Fabulous presentation today.
You're
yeah.
welcome.
Okay, and so you're gonna send me everything on the email, Elizabeth?
Yes, I hope to get those sent out today. I have a couple of things to catch up on.
Okay.
And
Okay.
hopefully, if not today, it'll be on, you'll see that in your inbox on Tuesday.
No problem. Thank you so much. Thank you, Laura. I hope to
You're
talk
welcome.
to you again. Thank you about the
Yeah.
Catherine thing. That's going to be fun. I'm going to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, I'll send you maybe through Dropbox those little videos so you can share a link to that as well.
Yes, please. That'd be
And do
fabulous.
can we get your PowerPoint too, Laura?
Yep. It'll be in
That's
the
what
email.
you'll be getting in the
Okay.
recording.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I love the posters. The posters were beautiful.
Yay.
Okay, thanks. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Happy
Okay,
holidays.
bye.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Holidays.
Happy Conifer and Broadleaf Day.
Right.